Hello, I am Ilona, and I was checking, yes, all these ancient DNA matches, and I found interesting pattern, and I am talking about that in my another video on my another channel, about this connection to Western hunter-gatherers like Scythian and Baltic area, not just specifically Baltic, like we maybe know now Baltic, but Baltic Sea area peoples. So they connection to Western hunter-gatherers, and I found interesting thing. What do we know about Proto Indo-European language, people, and everything what relates to that? If we assume, and kind of like the DNA points to that Scythians were descendants of Western hunter-gatherer people. Well, not maybe 100% just them, not maybe, most likely not just them. Obviously, there were some other admixtures, including languages. But what we know, where Indo-European emerged? Here, or somewhere around here. This is what we know. But it looks like there is a possibility it emerged somewhere here, maybe. And this area, it is not huge actually. It really is not. You could think, yes, it's where is this and where is this? But for thousands of years, it's nothing. People moved around quite a lot, and even if it feels like they don't move. Even if you have exact location where your family live and you don't move anywhere, your descendants, village by village, can move to completely different area after thousands of years. So even without literally walking, I think for me it looks like that's why finding a substrate can be quite difficult. And because there is the possibility that for this, yes, Proto Indo-European language as a language, it doesn't exist. It is not a language. It was never spoken. It's a reconstructed language based on similar languages. Yes. At that time, when we assume these Proto Indo-European people lived and spoke something like this Proto Indo-European, it was not one language, most likely. It was already who knows how many languages, and they had ancestors. And yes, we can say that people in Europe 10,000 years ago spoke languages unrelated to languages now, unrelated to Indo-European languages. That's when we look from our modern perspective, from today. Because if how many people will understand actually Proto-Indo-European language? We know it is Proto-Indo-European, but regular person would not recognize it as related language. If we reconstruct, as I say, like linguist, I guess, yeah, 6,000 years ago, but 6,000 years ago, those people who lived back then, if they knew about linguistics and they did their own reconstructions, they would be maybe able to reconstruct even more for the 6,000 years ago. It's not like the language Proto-Indo-European appeared out of nowhere. It had ancestors. Yes, I already said that. But these ancestors, maybe for people 6,000 years ago, they could somewhat recognize the language. If they had also time machine and if they traveled to 2,000 years ago, maybe they would recognize that languages are somewhat similar. But we wouldn't. For us, these languages really are already completely unrelated. We can look at Native Americans as their languages. They are supposed to be descendants from some Siberian tribes, which I I don't know actually now. Don't remember. It was not probably just one migration, so not just necessarily just one language. But I think most of the Native American languages still evolved from one language, and they are completely unrelated over this how many 10, 15,000 years. For us, ancestral languages of Indo-European languages 10,000 years. Yes, they existed, but these languages are completely unrecognizable for us. They existed, but they are not related to modern Indo-European languages, not anymore. Similarly, like DNA works, we know all living things on this planet are related if we look far back enough. Yes, we can see how we are related to other mammals. We can see how we are related even maybe to fish because we have eyes. But do you see how you are related to a tree or a mushroom? No, but genetically we are. We do share common ancestor. Similarly with languages. And what I think, there is this high possibility, how it looks like looking at DNA and everything, that before Proto Indo-Europeans, there were languages which were similar or distantly related. Like, for example, now Russian is distantly related to English. We just know these languages are related. We can find some similar words. But will English person understand Russian? Of course, no. And similar situation most likely was happening like 8,000 years ago. There were much less people back then. They were much more mobile. And they clearly did had some kind of interactions between each other. And it is not so crazy to think that people here, people here, people here, people here had some kind of a branches of related languages. I am not saying that all Western hunter-gatherers spoke same language. There were probably, especially in this area, some other language groups completely unrelated to some language groups here. Most likely there were more than just one or two or three language groups. But some of them already had to be related to this ancestral before even Proto Indo-European languages. And that could explain why when Indo-Europeans from Yamnaya spread somewhere through here to Europe, why these languages, their language, was so easily and quickly, how to say it even? I think it's not like they came here and replaced all people here. They definitely didn't. If you look at DNA, they didn't. Also, knowing that this now Latvian Lithuanian is a very conservative Indo-European language. It is also conservative in the DNA compared to other Europe because of this Western hunter-gatherer. So this area already have everything to be very conservative area. So what if people who lived here before this Yamne spread? But yes, what if we already spoke related languages? That's why the mixing was so easy, and why the language was replaced. Maybe it was not really completely replaced even. And how I see it, Proto Indo-Europeans lived in much bigger area, but the modern Indo-European languages are not descendants from all these Proto-Indo-European languages, but from this one specific branch. So there was this one specific branch which spread through Europe. That's why all the European languages are quite close to each other. Well, obviously, of course, also because geographically we are closer. But If we look like at the Iranian or Hittite or even Albanian and Armenian, they are also Indo-European, but they are really very different because they evolved from other branch of Proto Indo-European languages. Actually, I had a little bit time to think about it more, and now I think here I may be a little bit wrong. I don't know why I sometimes, yes, it is. Many people do that. The DNA doesn't show language. It's not always language, of course, very often. It is connected to language, but definitely not always. And I don't know why I made this assumption that Western hunter gatherers who moved to the Eastern Europe, they continued to speak their languages. There is also a possibility that they were newcomers. And those people who lived at that time already there, those hunter gatherers, were Eastern European hunter gatherers. It is possible that either their languages mixed or they learned the native languages. It even makes more sense, actually. You look on the map, like Latvia, Lithuania, and Ukraine are not so far from each other. And if we can speak related languages now in most of the Europe, we could, our ancestors also could speak related languages in bigger areas, which are really geographically are not so far away. For me, yes, now it makes sense that probably these Yamnaya people who spread their they had their own branch of already these other related Proto-Indo-European languages, and the modern, like Baltic, Slavic, Germanic languages are descendants of just that branch of Proto-Indo-European languages. Or, yes, other possibility, as I said, for example, like Baltic language or Proto-Baltic, could be even already a separate branch which split before that. But also, what I think there was another wave, most likely in Southern Europe, the Indo-European languages moved in from other way, from the south, not maybe not even from Yamna, but from some kind of farmer communities from this Anatolian area. And yes, there is no connection found between Basque and Indo-European languages. And I am not saying there is, most likely there isn't. But that also shows that in Anatolian area, people already spoke different languages. And only one of these languages or language groups were Proto-Indo-European. So these farmers already most likely spoke a variety of different unrelated languages. And when they moved to the Southern Europe, they moved with their languages. And when they settled, they probably spoke their own language, basically. Yes, this is, I think, how it probably happened.